Dr. Riley Fancher. She is a licensed clinical psychologist and the founder and director of Fancher Psychology and Therapy, which is a thriving group practice located in Wilmette. She works with clients across the lifespan to help reduce anxiety, learn effective coping tools, improve relationships, and live a more fulfilling life. Dr. Fancher holds a doctorate in clinical psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. She has experience in working with individuals of all ages, but specializes in working with high-performing, perfectionistic clients. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Riley Fancher.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you guys tonight because this is probably the number one thing that I'm talking to fellow parents about, both personally and professionally. I have a 6th grade son and a 2nd grade son, so I am fully in it personally. And I think it's something that is really helpful for us to talk about because this didn't exist when I started grad school. I mean, I didn't have a smartphone. iPhones didn't exist. Social media was not a thing. And so it was a really interesting experience to not even have this as something that we studied. We had no research on this when I was starting in the field. And now 20 years later, we're just starting to have like longitudinal research and data about what is this doing to us? What is it doing to us as adults? What is it doing to our children? And we're just having this like first generation of kids who've been fully like living in this online world. So I think it's a really exciting time that we're starting to get some information about what we do with it. So I have worked with kids, families, parents for over 15 years, and this is something that we now incorporate into our intake process, is talking to people of all ages about what their relationship to social media, to their phones, technology is. That's like how much of a relationship it plays in people's lives now. And it's something that is really interesting, but we were starting to talk about it in some of our team meetings where we were like, well, does this kid have an iPhone? Do they have social media? And we were like, we need to have procedures in place to actually assess for this. And it is really interesting to see the different relationship that technology plays in every single family's life. I know that everything that we talk about today, there could be a, but what if this or what if this? And it's a very nuanced situation. I know that every family system and every kid is different. So I'm gonna try and give you a lot of like high level information, research, data. And then of course, there are things that like will work for some kids and not for other kids. Will work for some families and not for other families. And that's totally fine and understandable. So tonight we're really gonna talk about the impact of social media on children's mental health because we have data now. And you know, spoiler alert, it's not good, right? Like we don't have data that social media is like so great for kids' mental health and it's improving things. And I think most of us know this, but we don't know what to do about it necessarily. How to manage common challenges with kids and tech, because there are really common challenges that pretty much every parent faces at some point in the game between preschool and like high school, college. And the things that we're going to talk about tonight, they really could be applicable developmentally appropriately for preschool and developmentally appropriate for high school. So we can talk about what that looks like for kids of different ages. How and what to talk about with your kids around tech, because a lot of this is evolving communication. This is keeping an open line of dialogue and going back and forth and changing things as your kids develop. And having kids of different ages in the home, different things might be appropriate, but there are some really good solid boundaries. And then real world strategies to create a healthy relationship with tech in your home. So something that I think is super, super important is that it's not too late. The ship has not sailed. And this is a very common experience that we'll hear from parents when they come to seek help with their kids is, but I already gave them a phone. Or they have had, you know, Roblox or Minecraft or whatever the video game is for years. I can't change it now. And that part of this is something that I think we all have to think about why we want to change it, what's working, what's not working, but it's never too late to make changes. It's never too late to say, hey, I've learned some things and I think we need to like switch things up. But I think this like narrative or cognitive dissonance around like, you know, I don't know, I think the cat's off the bag, right? It's already happened, there's nothing I can do. I don't think that's true. You know, we've seen a lot of really good progress happen with families when they learn different ways that the tech is impacting their kids to set more intentional limits and guidelines and to see things, it's like a ship, right? It might not change overnight, but it's gonna slowly shift course. All right. One of the biggest questions is, what is the right amount of screen time? And I wish that I could tell you, if you have 75 minutes of screen time in a 2-day period, like this is the optimal amount for mental health. We don't have a number. I wish that we did, but it's really not, there's no number that is like, this is the right amount, this is the safe amount, this is the unhealthy amount. It's individualized, it's nuanced, but there are some guidelines that the American Academy of Pediatrics has kind of laid out to say, okay, it's less about the amount of time and it's more about these 4 things. So one is balance. When we think about balance, what does this kid's life look like? Do they only have social interaction through a screen? Do they move their bodies outside of the home? Are they on this all day, every single day? The balance between like the tech and their life is something to really consider and has been shown to be correlated with mental health. The content, like what are they watching? Not all videos, not all screens are created equal. I actually had a friend of mine who's a psychologist say that he cares more about the size of the screen for his kids than he cares about like the amount of time. And I was like, that's so interesting. Like, tell me about that. And he said, you know, if you really think about it, if we're watching like a big movie at a movie theater, he's like, that's like an event. That's a screen, but it's a family event. He's like, okay, now if we're watching TV in the family room, we're all a part of this together. It's a community event. We can all see and consume what's happening. Now you have an iPad, right? And he's like, well, now we're kind of losing them. They're in their own little holes, and you know, I don't know what's going on the iPad. And then you have the iPhone, and it's like, now we're really in problems because they're taking that thing like all over the house with them, right? So I think this is an interesting thing when we think about like the quality of the screen and the type of screen and the type of like content matters a lot. Co-viewing is another one that is really, really important, and this is one that hit me personally pretty hard, and I was like, oh yeah, that is really important. Watching with your kids what they're consuming online. And I'm not saying all day, every day. Believe me, I understand the limits of life and family, but I was really surprised when I sat down with my son and I looked at what he was looking at on this video game, and I was like, oh, tell me more about what's going on here. There are things on some of these video games that most kids play, and it's not to vilify it, but it's just to be like, do you know what they're watching? Do you know when they're scrolling through Instagram or YouTube or even like a very kid-friendly Minecraft, Roblox, things that lots of kids play? It really did startle me when I started to sit down more and actively like kind of co-view with my kids. So it is something that is really helpful, and I think just like checking in is also correlated with better mental health for kids. Then communication. Are we talking to our children about what they're watching? Are they talking to us? We need to be able to communicate to them good guidelines. We need to be able to communicate to them like concerns, and we'll talk a lot about communication. But these 4 things, according to the Academy of Pediatrics, these are more correlated with better health outcomes for kids than just the screen time number alone. So I think that's an important one too, because I know a lot of parents sometimes get worried about like that exact number. Some of the things that I really encourage families to think about when they're kind of organizing screen time in their homes is, does it interfere in your child's life to participate in developmentally appropriate activities? So they're spending 12 minutes, 2 minutes, an hour, 3 hours. Are they motivated to go outside and see kids in person? Are they playing sports? Are they having dinner with the family? What else are they doing? If you start to feel like the tech is interfering with your kids' ability to interact in just developmentally appropriate kid stuff, okay, that's a sign. And that might happen with 15 minutes and that might happen with 3 hours, right? But recognizing that, I think, is a good gut check. And then what is it adding to your child's life? Stopping and asking yourself, what is this technology doing? Is it adding anything to my kid's life? Are they really like enjoying it? Is it bringing them connection? Is there something fulfilling? Or is it not? Is it actually just causing battles in our family and it's not really adding anything? So I think that's another thing just to consider as you're starting to think about, what is the magic number? Boredom is also a piece of this puzzle when we think about boredom in kids. And a lot of people know Dr. Becky Kennedy. I think she's kind of like the Dr. Spock of parenting right now. But she really talks about how boredom is necessary for kids. And it's really the point at which like imagination can take off. It's okay, right? It's okay for our kids to be bored, but there's so many things competing for their attention right now. And then dealing with their discomfort when they are bored, right? So don't be afraid of your kids being bored if they have some of this extra free time. It's a gateway to creativity to some extent. when we think about how parents are making decisions about technology, I think one of the biggest things is, why are you making the decisions that you're making? Everything's a spectrum, right? There's some things that research says really probably not good. There's some things that said research is really pretty good over here. And then there's a whole wide ocean of things in the middle. But I think if we can bring intention into our parenting, this is really helpful. So what's influencing your decisions around technology in your home? Are you aligning your parenting decisions with your parenting values and saying, yes, we are making this decision about tech because this is our family value around responsibility or empathy or honesty, or are we running away from things that we fear? And I think that if you can kind of gut check yourself about the current rules you have in your home, current parenting decisions you're making around tech, and saying, well, I really let them have the phone because I was afraid they were going to be left out. Okay, that happens, but it's parenting out of fear. And are you okay with that? Is that how you want to be parenting? Is it that, oh, I let him stay on this game that I feel kind of questionable about because I was afraid that he was going to get really mad and throw a big tantrum if I took it away? Okay, that's a real thing, right? But it's again parenting out of fear. And I think if we can start to notice which decisions we're making that are more about fear of what could happen versus the ones that are like, no, it's okay for you to be upset about this, or I know this is going to be very hard if you're the last one with a phone or the last one with this, but we can get through this as a family because this is the intention and why we're making it. It can be helpful. And again, I don't want to like sugarcoat this, that it's all rainbows and easy, right? Like I know how hard these decisions are, but I think as parents, if we can start to see which side of the fence we're making some of our decisions around tech about, we can start to feel a little less dissonance or discomfort about why we're making these decisions. So one of the things that I'll encourage parents to do is to really like sit down and develop family values. What are our family values? Like what are the things that are important to us? And is the way that we have tech in our house aligned with these things? Or is it feeling like it's actually like kind of far over here? And then what do we do about that? Another really important thing about technology and giving kids access, whether it's a phone, a watch, a video game, what's the purpose? What is the purpose of the device? And I think this is a really interesting one because it's just kind of a rite of passage now, right? Like it's part of our world, kids get access to tech, but why? And I think there's a lot of different answers to this. So what's a reason that you guys might give your kid a device?
Communication.
Communication, totally, right. Anything else?
A reward.
A reward, yeah. Other things? Airplanes, totally. Yeah, like just pacify, right? Occupy, totally. Anything else?
Research for school.
Yeah, academics, totally. It's like interwoven into school now, yeah. Tracking them, yeah. So I think we've got to think about what is the purpose. And then if some of the purpose is like, okay, entertainment, that's okay, right? It can be a part of entertainment. But is it going down that road of like, ooh, I'm giving my kid access to this because of popularity or status, or is there some other thing is that the purpose of the device? Is that what I want for my kid? Maybe we have to stop and think about that and that idea of like, okay, am I running away from a fear and giving them access, or does this actually feel like the right time for our family for them to have access to this? And is it in line, right, with what we want for our kid? I also think it's really important that they might have access at certain points and then you might pull back that access. And that is okay. I think sometimes there's this idea of like, once Pandora's box has been opened, it is open and we cannot close it. And there is reality to the fact that as we learn how our own child interacts with technology, we might have to make changes in our house. Because one kid could be totally fine, right? They might sit on the counter and they don't really touch it because they're running around outside. One kid is, it's like in their face all the time. And we didn't anticipate that. And so then what do we do? And I think giving yourself permission as a parent to say, okay, every kid has a nuance. I'm learning as you're learning, right? And we just gotta kind of go back and renegotiate and try something new. That's okay. There are also alternatives, alternatives to an iPhone. There's been a really big push lately in landlines, like dumb phones too, old school flip phones. Like we're going back to where we started, like 20 years ago, where kids are getting access to phones for communication, which is kind of the original reason of a phone. They can take that, and then they don't have some of these social media things. They don't have some of the video games. They don't have some of the other things that maybe weren't our parenting intention for them to have when we wanted them to have the phone communication. There's really interesting, like I saw ads for something called the tin can. Have you guys seen this? Yeah, right. It's basically like an old school landline, but they're making it cool now. That it's like, look at this thing now. Some families are doing communal family phones where it is an iPhone, but it stays in the kitchen kind of like a landline did. And then if you're going somewhere, then you can take the family phone with you and use that for communication. So I think kind of as you're thinking about what is the purpose, what is the function, and is it working for our family and our kid in particular, this is a really helpful question to ask yourself. Whether you have a child that you've already given access to, or if you have kids that are really young and you're like trying to be mindful and plan for what this looks like. Watches are also communication devices, right? And the functionality is a little bit different. And there's some that have access to internet and some that don't. And then there's lots of parental controls so that you can like roll out slowly with intention. The thing that I think is really important for us to talk about is that you are the pilot, you are the captain of the ship, and you are often choosing between two discomforts when you're making parenting decisions around tech. And I think that this is one of the most inconvenient truths about parenting and life maybe in general, is there's not usually a right decision and a wrong decision. It's two different decisions with two different sets of pros and cons, right? Maybe the pro is my kid is going to feel happy and connected to their peers by having access to Snapchat. That is a pro. The con of that is this could open up a whole lot of access to content and people and like things that I don't really want them to have access to. But these are two different discomforts, right? If I don't do this, they're going to be uncomfortable and there's going to be potentially social like fallout from this. But I'm uncomfortable if I do this because then they're having access to it. So I think thinking around this is really helpful, that it's not about right or wrong, it's which discomfort is it that you're picking. So one of the best like ideas around this that I really, really like is Dr. Kennedy, and you guys might have heard this, but I feel like it's one of my favorite things around parenting decisions right now because she has this example where she talks about being the pilot and like on a plane. And if you have been in an airport all day long, you're exhausted, you have been delayed, you are just wanting to get on that plane and get home. And then you get on the plane, you're like, yes, I'm gonna make it, I'll be in bed. And then the pilot, you get up and the pilot is like, hey, you know what, we're experiencing a lot of turbulence, we're gonna have to divert the plane, we're gonna have to land in Idaho, we're not making it back to Chicago tonight. Everyone on the plane is like, God, no, right, like complaining, frustrated. And then the pilot's like, yeah, okay, let's wing it, let's go, let's try it. I mean, like, how do you feel, right? I don't want the pilot to, like, go if he doesn't think it's safe. So I love this example that she gives because I think it really is a good correlate for our role as parents. If our kids, like, they're gonna complain about boundaries, they're gonna ask for these things, it's completely normal. But if you don't think it is safe for them, if you don't feel like it's in line with your parenting values, okay, then they can throw the fit, right? They can get really upset about it. You can support them, you can hold that, but you don't have to fly through the storm and say, fine, that's okay, we'll try it anyway, if it really doesn't feel like the right thing for you. So I think that I love this example, and I think it works for lots of things beyond technology, that it's our job to set the boundaries, it's their job to have the feelings, but we don't have to change our boundaries because of our kids' feelings. Now, managing our kids' feelings is a whole nother thing, and it's what we do all day, every day, right, in my practice. And so sometimes that is really hard to hold your child's feelings and to hold all of the intensity around the sadness or the frustration. But it is a part of these choosing between two discomforts and picking the one that feels like the one that you can handle and feels right for your family at that moment in time. I also think there's something to be said for demonstrating your confidence in your child's ability to get through something hard. Because that's really, really important, right? We can't control all of the things that are going to happen in our life, but we can demonstrate confidence in our kids. I know this is tough. It doesn't have to be no forever, but it's no for right now. And you can get through this, and we'll reassess it. We will talk about this. And I don't want to sound idealistic, believe me, I have had my 6th grader like yell at me about things, and I know how hard it is and what it feels like in my body. It's tough. But this idea around where do I draw my lines as a parent, I think of it like a bowling alley with the bumpers. It's like health and safety. And I think that if these are your bumpers for parenting, it helps you to figure out like, okay, I'm all right with a lot of things in the middle, but if something's bumping up against health or if something's bumping up against safety, this is my line. That's gonna be different for different parents, different kids, different families, but I think if you can start asking yourself, okay, why am I uncomfortable with this? Well, mental health is health, and it is serious, and we have very clear research now that a lot of this tech is too much for kids. It's too much for us. I mean, like, I think a lot of adults are struggling with their relationship to technology. So if you're worried about mental health, okay, well, we got to think about that, right? If you're worried about safety, there are a lot of real safety issues online. Kids have access to the entire internet in their pocket. They have access to Google anything. You know, the average age that a kid is exposed to pornography now is 11. Like, that's wild. My kid is 11. It's one of those things that I think we just have to think about, and it's not to say that this is like doom and gloom and definitely going to happen to every single child, but health and safety is a consideration with everything in parenting, but it's a consideration with technology too. So I think that if we're going to talk about like how to set the bumpers for kids, how to prepare them for technology, and also how to like proactively have some conversations with them, or back up the train and have some conversations with them if they've had this device for a year, 2 years, 3 years, but we haven't had these conversations, we can sit down with them now and say, hey, right, I think we just need to like go back and talk about some things that we didn't know a few years ago when you got the phone. So one of them is respectful communication online. This is really interesting because there's been really interesting research that has shown if you do not have access to someone's facial reaction, kids are meaner. People are meaner. I mean, you can see this in comments online. Things that somebody would probably never say. Some maybe, right? There's always an extreme. But like most people wouldn't say to somebody's face, they'll write it and they'll send it. So having a conversation with kids about the lack of input and that things hurt, whether it is said to their face, said on a screen, respectful communication. And this can go back to parenting values, family values, that we have respectful communication in this family. This is really important. What does that look like? And what does that not look like? And the idea of what to do, right? If somebody is being really mean online, if they're seeing it or if they're on the receiving end of it. Because sometimes they might not be on the receiving end of it, but they're in a group chat with it. And then what do they do with that? There's an interesting example that I learned a long time ago working with teenage girls where you took a tube of toothpaste and you had every girl pour out the tube of toothpaste. And then the workshop facilitator was like, okay, put the toothpaste back in. And the girls were like, I can't put the toothpaste back in. And that's the correlate for putting things out online. Once it is out, it is there. And I think that helping kids to understand that, because sometimes they don't know that it's literally there forever and people can have access to it. So this permanence of an online presence, I think, is something that is an important kind of laying of the groundwork or going back and kind of regrounding or repaving when we think about giving kids access to technology and having healthy consumption around technology. Everything that they put out there, if they think about like, you looking at it, their teacher looking at it, their friends looking at it, like, would they be comfortable with that? And if they're not, maybe they stop and they think about that. What do you do if a child sees something that makes them uncomfortable? This can be something from like a scary cartoon on Roblox to pornography. It's a huge, huge gamut. Roblox is one of the ones that startled me. Sitting down and looking at Roblox, it's like, oh, okay. We took a breather from it for a while because I gave my kid access and then I didn't feel so good about it. He wasn't happy with it, but we got through it. And we're slowly like opening the gate a little bit to try again years later. And again, I'm not vilifying Roblox. It was just one of those ones where I was like, I did not know that you could scroll through and see some of these images. They're actually kind of disturbing and uncomfortable. So it's something that I think is important to talk to a kid. Like if you see something that makes you uncomfortable, what do you do, right? We talk about that with them in the real world. If there's a stranger, if they come up to you, if they ask you to get in the car, most of us have had these conversations with our kids, right? You don't get in the car, you scream for help, you go get an adult. We had these conversations with our kids about online. If you see something that you're just like, oh, I don't know why this makes me uncomfortable, but I don't like it, what do you do? And I think being able to kind of have this ability to have them come to you, to talk about it, to talk about things that they might see online, I think is really important. And this idea around privacy. Have you actually explicitly talked to your child about what privacy online looks like? What privacy with their iPhone looks like, their iPad? Is there an expectation of privacy? And have you thought about that in your home? Do you have a system for monitoring your kids' tech? That if a kid knows, hey, this is our family's device, I'm gonna be looking at it. Your other parent might be looking at it, right? We are here to help you. It's not about punishment. It's not about getting in trouble. This is a lot of stuff to manage. And I think if you are a teammate versus I'm going to look at this, and if you're doing this, you're going to get punished for it. No, of course, there's a place for punishment. I'm not saying that if you've talked to your kid about something multiple times and they keep doing it, yeah, of course. But having this initial conversation that if you come to me when something is uncomfortable, kind of like the drunk driving conversation that some people have with their kids, right? If you're at a party, if there's drinking, if there's drugs, if you're uncomfortable, call me. You won't be in trouble. If something like this is happening where kids are in an online forum where they're like, ugh, I don't know, this person said this thing and it made me uncomfortable, and maybe they weren't supposed to be in that online forum, right? Well, they're going to, if you have an honesty kind of a policy, like if you can bring it to me, I will be much less upset than if I go online and find it on my own. This idea of having this open communication, I think, is really, really important, because it's going to happen that kids are going to stumble onto things that are too grown up for them, beyond their developmental capacity, and they don't know what to do with it necessarily. So I think even just telling kids that this is going to happen, and what do we do? What's the plan? The other thing that I think is really important when we talk about laying the groundwork with tech is what to do if a kid is struggling. What to do if a friend or somebody in a group chat or somebody on Snapchat or somebody in an online forum is like, I'm depressed, I want to kill myself, I'm hurting myself, but don't tell anybody. This happens a lot, and it's a heavy burden that we'll see a lot of the teenagers in our practice primarily come to us and say, oh my gosh, there's this friend and I've been talking to him every night and I'm up till 3 a.m. because I don't want him to hurt himself, but I don't know what to do. Being able to have a conversation with your kid and saying, sometimes people might be having a hard time online and they might ask you to keep secrets or they might ask you not to tell anybody. But in the same way, we might have a conversation with our kids about, some of the sexual abuse concerns around if a grown-up says something or does something in person, right? Like it makes you uncomfortable or you come tell me. These kinds of things can happen online. And if we proactively talk to our kids about it, we've started the communication piece, one of those 4 things that the American Academy of Pediatrics say, help with mental health for kids. So they're all just things to consider, but this is actually a pretty heavy burden, and kids aren't equipped. They're not equipped to know what to do if somebody's hurting themselves, cutting themselves, wanting to die. I don't think a lot of adults are equipped, right, to know what to do. But the ability to have community come to you and say, I need help, that's something that you can open the door to. This one is really interesting. So last year, I went to the American Psychological Association conference, as I do most years, and almost every session was about AI. It was about artificial intelligence in the field of psychology. And it was really, really fascinating, because I think this is exponential rising. Talking to our kids about real versus fake online is super important when we think about their mental health. Because if you think about Instagram and you think about the number of things that you might scroll and you might see, it's wild. The images and the photos and the videos that can be doctored now. So even just having a conversation with our children to say, hey, do you know that you could see an image and it might not be real? Just even editing it, putting somebody's face on somebody else's body, right? There are videos of somebody an AI person walking through someone's actual kitchen, and they're like, that's what is happening, right? The things that we can do, it's really cool, but it's also pretty scary. And I think that children are in a very susceptible age. When kids are in this preteen, teen age, when so much of what they're learning is getting encoded into kind of their brain architecture, it's really important that we teach kids to be skeptical. So I think that this is a piece of the puzzle now that probably wasn't even 5-6 years ago in the same way. There's always been fake stuff online. Same idea of somebody says they're a 9-year-old boy, but how do we know they're a 9-year-old boy? The idea of recognizing that there can be things online that look one way that might be another. When we think about how to be skeptical, it just means we can't believe everything that we see online, and it's okay to come to you. It's okay to say, hey, I saw this thing and I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not. Teaching them what a primary and a trusted source is. I mean, they're learning these things in school, hopefully, with research and academics, but sometimes it doesn't always cross over. That if I read something in a Instagram post, where did it come from? Who said it? They presented it as medical advice, but did a doctor say it? Who's the doctor? It's really, really interesting when we look at teenage girls, we look at health, we look at body image, we look at eating. There's a lot of these Instagram accounts that look like wellness, they look like fitness, and they're being told all of these bits of information that, well, if you drink celery juice for, 3 3 weeks straight and only do this, and then they take it and they're like, well, that's true, so that's what I'm gonna do. It can really feed into some of these really negative things where we don't know who this is coming from. We don't know where this advice is coming from. So kind of teaching our kids some of these things that it might look very official and very real, but how do we dig deeper? The other thing that I was actually kind of fascinated about and really scared about when we think about these AI therapists and things like that, is this idea of like an AI hallucination or delusion. So as artificial intelligence is evolving, if AI has like a gap in its knowledge, if it doesn't know, it will just like create something. So it might be saying like, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, pink elephants are the leading cause of da-da-da. Like they just fill in the gap. And it's something that is really dangerous and kind of scary, and we need to teach our kids some of these things. AI is great for like an initial, but we gotta look a little deeper. If something sounds weird, it doesn't sound right, or like let's make sure we're getting this information from multiple places and it's all lining up, because AI hallucinations are a real thing. And when I heard about this and I heard about it in therapy, I was like, whoa, it's a little alarming, right? We're in infancy. We're in the early stages of artificial intelligence, and I mean, iPhones have only been out for 20 years. The internet is still fairly new. Many of us in this room, when we were born, the internet didn't exist. So I think that's another really important thing to consider, that we are really in infancy. And when we think about like driver's licenses, age of 16, that's just been known for a long time. We think about drinking alcohol. Okay, yeah, that's 21, that's been that way, it's a given. When alcohol was invented, when cars were invented, we didn't have age limits. We didn't have like licenses and things that said, okay, you have to be this age to use this. Tech is new, social media is new. Maybe one day we are going to have like, okay, well the age that you can start this is this age, and it's just like a given, but we're not there yet. So we are all trying to kind of like wild, wild west this right now. And I think something that some of you might have already heard about is Jonathan Haidt and his Anxious Generation. Will you guys raise your hand if you've read this book or heard of this? Yeah, okay, almost everyone in the room. So he has really done a good job. He's a social psychologist. He's done a great job taking a lot of the data that we now have, that we didn't have before, and giving us some of these guidelines. So his guidelines, I won't spend a ton of time on this because I think that you guys know a lot of it, is, hey, we've gotten to a mental health crisis with our children. How do we right the ship? One of the really interesting stats that I heard that actually changed a lot of the way that I parent was that over the past 15 years, our hospitalizations and physical injuries for kids have plummeted, while mental health admissions have skyrocketed. And we are overprotecting our kids in the real world, and we are underprotecting our kids in the online world. And I was like, whoa, okay. This actually really hit me in a way where I was like, that is so true. I don't know that I have given my children the information they need to be safe online, but they know a lot of information about how to be safe in the real world. So I think Jonathan Haidt has done a really nice job giving us some preliminary guidelines to say, hey, based on the research, here are some things that I think might right this ship. And his are no smartphones before high school. Let kids be kids. It is so fast. This childhood chapter is very, very short, and they need to be having certain experiences to kind of get through all these developmental milestones. And we found that too much screen use inhibits some of this. It's not good. No social media before 16. Phone-free schools. It's really interesting to see. I think a lot of states are passing these laws. We'll see what comes of it. But letting kids actually interact and learn without the kind of lure and distraction of the devices. And then more unsupervised play and independence, the ability to get out into the real world. So these are his guidelines based on the synthesis of some research and data. And I think there's something here. Okay. So how do we buffer our kids from the stress around tech? This is a tricky one, right? Because it is stressful in the same way that anything can be. But I think one of the biggest things we can do is helping our kids to build a healthy self-concept, learning how to get involved in things not in the tech world, helping them to feel like productive members of society in our homes, in their community, that we don't want our kids to be so focused on their online world and their online games and their online everything that they are not connected to what's happening in the real world. We want to encourage and support in-person socialization. There's a different quality, right? Like, I remember giving a talk during COVID where I was behind my screen. I had no idea, I had no feedback from the audience. I didn't know, is everybody really bored and not paying attention? Or people interested? That it's different when you are in person with people than online. By no means am I saying there's not a place for both, but I think a way to buffer them is having multiple places where kids feel a sense of belonging. Discussing issues around safety, feeling sort of comfortable, we talked a little bit about this already, and offering these punishment-free places for kids to bring their fears and concerns that they have to you. What do you do? How do we create space for them to bring it up? When we think about creating healthy tech in our home, there are a lot of things that we can do, and you guys might already be doing some of them, but there are some things that I think we've got to think about for bottom of the pyramid. And this is something that I'll talk to every single person who walks into my office about. If we think about wellness, it's like a pyramid where we could be doing the most amazing, wonderful therapy in the entire world, but if the bottom of the pyramid is not solid, it's not going to work. Bottom of the pyramid is sleep. Bottom of the pyramid is eating. Bottom end of the pyramid is moving your body. It is in-person interactions and having social connection. If these things aren't in place, it's gonna be hard. So sometimes we start at the bottom. We say, let's shore up the bottom. What's one of the number one things that interferes with kids' sleep? Tech. Yes, totally. So this is really important to have screen-free places in your house. Really, the bedroom, that is a spot where a lot of different professionals, including, the 10 rules for raising a kid in a high-tech world. She is do not allow a smartphone into the bedroom at all costs. And I think because when we think about the bottom of the pyramid and sleep and how important it is not only for our child's physical health and growth, but for their mental health, this makes a lot of sense. When we think about other screen-free places and times in our home, where could we just not have it? Are there places where it's tech-free? And the modeling of that too. And this is something where I'm not awesome about it sometimes, right? That if I'm asking my kid not to have technology in a certain space, I'm really trying to model that behavior too. But it can be challenging. So it's the idea of family rules, family shifting, and of course we're adults and there are kids and there's different rules, but considering parental modeling is important. When we also think about having a home for the devices, do they wander with us everywhere, right? Or are there places where it's okay, if you're gonna be on your iPad, you can be on it in this room or this room, but these are the two places. And then this is where it goes at a certain time in the day. That you have a home, you have a spot, you get into routine with it. Sometimes being able to talk to your kid and teaching your kid what your body feels like when you've had too much screen time can be really helpful. So one of the ways that I talk about this is I've eaten too much candy. I love candy, candy's great. Wonderful if I have a little bit. And then I hit a point where it starts to be yucky. I don't feel good in my body. It's the same thing with screens. If we think of it as a dessert, it's great, it's wonderful, it's fun. And yes, of course, we have to use it for real life and work and school and things like that. But how does it feel in your body? It's really interesting. Myopia is increasing for kids because we are right here with our devices all the time. So even the physical component of we need a break from the small screen. We could maybe watch a movie as a family if we want to do some more of this. But there are some real things around how do we just build this healthy relationship? Because it's not going anywhere. It's part of life. And then this idea about keeping the conversation going with boundaries, and it doesn't need to be stagnant. And I think this is something that is really important, that tech evolves, our children evolve, and so our boundaries and our rules will evolve. And if we think about scaffolding, right? This is something that comes from developmental psychology. It happens a lot in schools. It's kind of the idea of okay, I'm gonna be here and we're gonna do this together. And then I'm gonna pull back and I'm gonna see if you can do it on your own. Oh, not yet? Okay, we're gonna pull scaffolding back. It's a part of this process. It's collaborative and it's dynamic. It's not as easy as it's 1 hour, it's this device, it's not this. It's a little bit more complex than that. I do think Jean Twenge's book, The 10 Rules for Raising Kids in a High-Tech World, is nice. I think she and Jonathan Haidt are kind of locked up together, and she talks about different things, a lot of these things too, but it's somewhere you can do a deeper dive if you're curious. There are times where we need to think a little bit more about okay, this isn't working. I've set the boundaries, I've made the home, I've done the things, and my kids are blowing right past it. There are apps, there are parental controls, there are a lot of things that are there to support us and help us. There are apps like Bark. I don't know if anybody's heard of Bark, but you can get this app on your devices and it will alert you if certain words pop up. Suicide, pornography, sex, you'll get a alert, hi, at 2:07, this word popped up on your child's iPad. Certain images, you'll get reports basically. So it's a little bit of a watchdog is kind of what they call it. And Bark's not the only one, but there are these companies that are creating ways for parents to have a little bit more knowledge when there's things that are concerning online. We can also kind of set times in our home when the Wi-Fi's on and off. Like if it's not working, to have the devices away, if we're finding our kid like sneaking it, okay, well the Wi-Fi's off. What are you gonna do on it? That is within our control as parents if we're feeling like our kid needs more support to like live within the boundaries. We can also talk about owning of a device. A lot of the time we do give watches, iPads as presents. And I'm not knocking it, you know, I've done it. But I think there is this question for having neutrality around tech and it not being a reward or a punishment. And a lot of people will say, but it's the only thing that my kid will probably is motivated by. It's the only thing that they will respond to. I hear that, but I think that maybe even just working a little bit toward, especially if we have younger ones, like the idea of neutrality, that it's fun, it's a part of life, but it doesn't have to be like the ultimate reward or the ultimate punisher. And this might be an idealistic one, but I do think it is possible as it just becomes more and more a part of our life. We talked about privacy expectations, right? That it's a family device and the kids are getting to use it. It's a different idea than this is yours and there's an ownership to it. When we think about some of these like troubleshooting things, social media, man, it's a big one. And I think that even with controls, even with parental controls, even with, you know, an under 18 child profile, there's been really interesting research. It develops really fast. Kids are getting access to things that they didn't even demonstrate interest in. The suggested for yous are popping up and kids can get on algorithms pretty quickly that are pretty concerning. So my suggestion to anyone whose kid has access to social media, or if you're considering giving your child access to social media, and YouTube is social media, it's a really inconvenient truth, but it is. I would really encourage you to have that scaffolding idea, a lot of connection to it, especially in the beginning. And it's one of the things that we'll actually sit down with the kids in our office and say, okay, open Snapchat, let's look at Instagram together. Because looking at what the algorithm is, like what is it that they're consuming, it has a huge impact on their mental health. That's what they're looking at X number of minutes or hours a day, and it really does fuel some negative mental health stuff. When we think about the inappropriate content, that's definitely there. When we think about the comparison trap, I cannot imagine coming home from school and then finding out, right, that 3 of my best friends are at a party and I didn't know about it, or I wasn't included, or there's no break for kids anymore. There's no reprieve. And I think this part of it is something that's really hard. And sometimes we end up giving more access to tech to try and keep them from being left out. But it's almost like the cat chasing its tail, and it sometimes makes the situation a little bit worse. This is something that is hard, the comparison, but they're doing this or they're doing this. I mean, I think we as adults fall into this too, but if we think about it for an adolescent, when they're really figuring out their identity, their self-worth, this is really, really hard stuff. Kids are at a higher risk for body image concerns and eating disorders who are on social media. It's like a very unfortunate truth, especially girls, but boys are not immune. This unwanted and inappropriate contact from strangers, right? Kids have access to all kinds of people that can have access to them. So this is another thing that we're opening up the door to with social media. And then sleep disruption and the addictive nature of it. So these are things that all exist with social media. And I do think that we can consider some stricter limits around it when we're starting. We can pull back limits if we're noticing that it's impacting our kids' mental health, their sleep. We can offer a trial period before agreeing to long-term. You don't have to let the whole cat out of the bag. We can say, all right, here's a trial period. Here are the boundaries. Here are the expectations. Let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. These are all options that we can consider with parenting. And it could be something that you guys do together, right? Your teenager will love it. But it's something that, especially in the beginning, it's like, okay, but I want to know what you're consuming, at least for a little bit. And then I'll check in here and there. Group chats is the other one. So I would say of the 2 things that parents will come to us, like with grievances, concerns, worries about, social media, Snapchat, group text, these are the ones. So group texts are a huge part of social life for many kids, and they're all consuming and destructive and exhausting for many kids as well. So you have to see if it is adding to your child's life or if it's taking away from your child's life. Social pressure is intense. If you have ever seen your kid try to sit at the dinner table and the ding, 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 and they're like, right? Yeah. It goes off so much. It's the distraction. It's like that feeling of, oh no, but if I don't reply to it, then they're gonna be upset, or what if I miss out? Like, we have to monitor some of this and kind of teach them that there is always going to be more of this, and how do we manage that feeling in our body? Because it can become affect regulatory, right? I have an uncomfortable feeling, and so I go over here and I do this, or I'm worried about this, and so I'm just gonna respond to all of these things, or I'm gonna check. Lots of checking behavior. I just need to check my social media. I just need to check my texts. That can turn into like a really yucky kind of obsessive compulsive anxious trap. So watching how our kids respond to this, I think, is really important, and then pulling back a little bit. Some parents don't allow group texts. They'll allow texting, but no group texts. That's an option. Some parents will have real issues with somebody bullying and being mean, and then have to kind of talk to kids about how do you extricate yourself potentially from the situation. One of the things that like my husband and I have always told our kids is like, you can throw us under the bus. Mom won't let me. I think this is one of those things where you're like, how do you talk to your kids? If they're in a situation where a kid is trying to peer pressure them into something, what do they do? If we talk to our kids, have we kind of given them some options for, I really want to, but I can't because X, Y, Z, or blocking numbers, not having access, saying that, parents won't allow it. Believe me, I know there's so many nuanced situations where sometimes, it's like, that won't work, or this won't work for this reason. I get it. And that may be a situation where you need more support from other parents, therapist support, a group. There are very specific situations that are very challenging and tricky. But thinking a little bit about the group texts is that it's not great, and they're not as good for kids as the individual texts very often. Nothing is, all or none. Okay, seek support. We cannot do this alone. It takes a village to parent. It really takes other like-minded parents to help support us through this, to talk through this. I think finding other like-minded parents, being able to talk about, what are you doing? Have you tried this? It's really, really helpful. I think joining community organizations, like Catch, right? I think Catch is an amazing organization. There's so many that we have access to in our community. Signing petitions and pledges. I think Wait Till 8th has really taken off. And there are some more kind of grassroots things that are starting to help us set boundaries for our children, so we're not doing it by ourselves and not feeling like we're the only one or our kid's the only one, because that's a hard feeling. And encouraging open dialogue with parents, with superintendents of schools. This is a real thing. Our kids' mental health is suffering, and technology is a huge part of that. So how do we continue to work through this? Okay, here are some places you can go for more information. Thank you guys so much. It has been very nice to talk to you about something very important and challenging. And I will let Lisa, you come and talk about this.